it was just a tremendous religious experience. That God never abandoned us at ground zero. He was always there through his cross.
Father Jordan appealed to Deputy Mayor Joe Loader to have the cross preserved.
I said, Joe, I want this cross to be preserved. I want to be evacuated from there and erected and put on the site of ground zero. They say that God never abandoned us at ground zero. We need to have a sign of faith for the rescue workers. Right now, there's a lot of horror, and people are upset and emotional problems when one person's thinking about suicide. We have to have a sign of God's presence.
There were other signs of encouragement as well. Lower Manhattan is more than just the financial center of New York City. It is also a neighborhood. For months, residents of Tribeca and Battery Park City had been displaced from their homes, but they still rallied around their neighborhood.
So after working 12 hours a day and trying to work your way back to your car, I mean, you know, you're pretty beat up. So remember, I couldn't catch a bus ride up or anything this particular day, so I started walking. And by the time I got to Canal Street, I was lucky to make it that far. So I started across the intersection, and there's this humongous roar. It goes up like you're in a Super Bowl and somebody just kicked the winning field goal. So I'm looking around and think, well, maybe the governor or the mayor, or you know what I mean, or Jamie Lee Curtis or somebody's there. And here it's me. I realized it's me. I'm standing, Rick Ostrander, in the middle of the intersection, and I got 2,000-3,000 people just cheering.
Those people, you know, they don't realize, you know, how big a part they played in the morale of the men that were coming in out of that hole. And then all of a sudden, you know, you'd go from feeling depressed and lonely and tired, and you know, all of a sudden you'd feel, wow, man, you know, you'd get a big boost.
So all of a sudden your feet don't hurt so much anymore, you know what I mean? You tip the hat back a little bit, you walk a little straighter until you get past them. And then you're like...
Letters from children, cheers from residents, they equaled momentum. They equaled progress.
It slowly started to come together. You know, I remember when we cleared West Street, when it was finally clear, and you were able to get a gator or a four-wheel drive through there. I thought, wow, we really accomplished something.
That's the way we did it. One cut at a time, one piece at a time, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. And that's the way we did it.
The cut steel was taken off-site, loaded onto barges, and taken here, to a closed landfill on Staten Island. The FBI would comb through every piece looking for clues and recovering even the smallest bits of human remains. The name of the landfill is Fresh Kills. And as the site was emptied of debris, a problem arose. 3 months into the project, engineers discovered that the south and west slurry walls had moved in about 18 inches. That 18 inches had the makings of a catastrophe. The World Trade Center complex was built inside a 16-acre, 70-foot-deep concrete bathtub designed to hold back the Hudson River. Before the towers were built, the slurry wall was held in place by over 1,000 cables called tiebacks, drilled through the wall and anchored into bedrock. After the buildings were complete, the slurry wall was supported by the towers. The tiebacks, no longer needed, were cut. The slurry wall had literally been held up by the towers. But the towers were gone.
If that slurry wall had fallen, we would have had the Hudson River sitting in our lap. There's no way that we would have stopped the Hudson River from coming in there. It would have been a total disaster.
If it would have got into there, it would bound to have gotten into the path, into the 1 and 9 subway stations, the buildings around in the surrounding areas. All of them have substations, power to them. It could have been a real mess.
In fact, beneath the surface of Ground Zero was a 6-story subterranean world being combed by disaster experts looking for survivors or remains. The parking garage.
The story wall is right behind the piece of street story wall.
The subway stations. Shops. The PATH train running under the Hudson River between New York and New Jersey. If the slurry wall gave way, it could all be underwater. Rick Ostrander of Local 1456 and other dock builders worked to replace the tiebacks to stabilize the slurry wall. It was touch and go for weeks, but somehow it held. It was perhaps the single greatest danger averted at Ground Zero. Many of the workers, worried that the heavy security would prevent them from getting back into the site, simply lived at Ground Zero, working, eating, sleeping, and worshiping among the uprooted community of Lower Manhattan. Tired, hungry, away from home, the construction workers were adopted by the neighborhood.
Living at Ground Zero, you really didn't want for anything.
But I remember we'd be driving home and they'd say, okay, you know what the guys down at Ground Zero could really use is some gloves. Well, the next day, there'd be tractor trailers with gloves from Ohio, from Alabama, South Carolina. It was absolutely incredible. Then you'd be driving home and they'd say, okay, the guys down at Ground Zero really don't need any more gloves, but what they really need is toothbrushes, toothpaste, and batteries. And then the same thing 2 days later, here they would come. It was absolute. It looked like from VZ Street to Canal Street, looked like the world's largest Kmart blue light special.
Everywhere you went, there was somebody taking care of you. I don't know how many times somebody sat me down and took my boots off and changed my socks for me.
Those kind of things, pick up your spirits, makes you realize there's somebody else knows what you're doing down there and appreciates what you're doing down there.
That's true. New Yorkers are mean and difficult and cynical on a non-crisis basis. But when push comes to shove, there comes a crisis. There comes a terrible tragedy at the World Trade Center. New Yorkers, as they did since 1666, as we became a city, New Yorkers came together.
Eight and a half months after the attacks, the most important construction job in American history was near completion. The workers had not constructed a building or a bridge, but a hole. A large, clean, empty hole. By May 28, 2002, there was only one last steel